So I'm going to divide this lecture into two parts. The first part, I'm going to show you just kind of an overview of the different things that you can do with R Markdown and point you to a template repository where you can copy the R Markdown templates that I've made. Now that's just going to kind of give you ideas of what's possible, but it's not actually going to be like work ready. So the second half, I'm going to show you how you set things up if you are actually doing a report in our Markdown. And in my experience, the kinds of reports that many of us are doing that are going to have data, and then it's sucking in that data and then making a lot of different tables, and then maybe it's making some figures. And I'll show you how to structure something like that and how to make it look like a real report. And I just want to show you an example of what you're going to see, so that even though in the first half, what I'm going to show you, it's not going to look work ready, the second half, it's actually going to look a lot closer to what you need. So I'm going to show you how you can make output very easily. That a Word output, I'm going to focus on Word because I know that many of us do need to be using Word. That's our, if we're making a report, we're going to need to output it in Word rather than HTML or PDF. So that's what I'm going to focus on in the second half. I'm going to show you how to do things like this and how to, kind of automate, how you're getting that text in there. How to make these kind of tables that just sort of automatically are running through all the tables you need. So oftentimes I know from my work, I'm having to make the same table over and over for, it's got the same format, and maybe I'm doing the same analyses for it, but, it's got, here, one river, and then I need to make kind of the same sort of thing for the next river, and, I may have, 50 of these, say, within a report. So I'm going to show you how to do that. All right. Okay. And as usual with the chat, please jump in, throw your things in the chat. I'll be watching that. But if you can answer someone's question, just jump in there and answer that for them. Okay. So, so let's see. First off, I want to show you how you can make your first R Markdown file. And I see that I did not give you your link to RStudio Cloud so that you can play along even without having this installed. I will give a try to add that really quickly. May not do it. I'm welcome someplace else. Okay. So the link is projects. 2, 6, 4, 3, 9, 8. So I'm going to put this in the link. If you have an RStudio account, you're going to be able to follow along with the report part without having to set things up. It's set up for you. So you just click on that link. With RStudio Cloud, you can log in with a Google account, so it's not like you have to make a special account. One thing to be aware of when you're using RStudio Cloud, you get a set number of hours. So you get 5 free hours a month, and it is running through those hours, even if you just have the tab open like this. It'll eventually go to sleep, but it'll take about a half hour. And if you keep like refreshing it, it's just going to keep, like, it'll never go to sleep. So I've made that mistake before where I've accidentally run through all 5 hours just because I was switching back and forth between tabs. So when you're done using your RStudio sort of temporary workspace, you want to close that tab so you don't burn through your hours accidentally. All right. So that this workspace here, this is not the kind of the simple demos I'm going to be showing. This is the one for the report for the second half. For the demo ones, I am going to be showing it from this is the repository right here. So if you want to look at these, I'll give you that link. You can clone it to your computer and run those. All right, so let's jump in here. So first time making a R Markdown file. It's super easy. Let me show you that. So you go into File and New File, R Markdown. You can just say OK. Then you do knit. It's going to ask you to save it, so I'm just going to save it with whatever default. Oh, it wants it mean. Okay. Go. And there's the knit button that you're looking for. And it knits up this demo file for you. That's it. That's the process of knitting things within RStudio. This just makes it really easy now. RStudio does working with these Markdown files. So, a little bit of jargon. What's the difference between Markdown and R Markdown? So Markdown is just a very simple markup language. It's just kind of code that you write. It's not really code. It's things like this hashtag for a heading, and then you have things like this for bold. So the Markdown is just, you know, what are these little codes that you use to show what formatting you want. And then the R Markdown part means that you can mix code, in this case R code, in with the text, and it's going to run that code. So let's go back here. So this is the HTML that it generated, and so it ran this R code and put that in there, and you can embed tables, you can embed plots. So this is how we're going to be integrating our analyses using R and have our figures and tables updating as our data change. So it does say R Markdown, but it's not restricted to R at all. If a group is coding in something else, there's now quite a few different languages that R Markdown will understand. So just look into that if that's something that you need. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so this is that little knit thing right here we're looking for. And the standard options that it gives you are knitting to HTML, knitting to PDF, or knitting to Word. Those are the standard. There are other things that you can add. I'm going to show some of those, particularly how to knit to a like a slideshow, and I believe you can knit to PowerPoint also. So I'll show examples of these other ones in a moment. Okay, so let's close that. Right? Okay, so remember, get started, you just do that R, and then File, New, and then select R Markdown. And that's often how I'll get started to make a template one, and then I just delete all that sort of demo code that they gave me, and then put in whatever I want. Okay, so I want to go through the basic format of an R Markdown file. So the top, and I'm opening this basic R&D, which you will find in that repository that I linked to. If you look in the chat, that week 4 R Markdown repository, that has this file basic.rnd. So between these tick marks here is what's called the YAML. I actually have never heard the word said. I assume it said YAML, but I've never heard it said. So it's YAML, and it gives the instructions for how to process the text down here. The default is going to look something like this. I think it also adds date there for you. But there's a lot of different things that you'll be able to add there. I'll show you when we get to the report one, you're going to see some examples of a fairly complex set of instructions. It's important that you don't fuss with these little, tick, tick, ticks here. They need to be at the top, and they need to not have any spaces or anything like that. It's kind of a weird thing about our Markdown I found in the beginning is that it is picky about adding spaces. It doesn't just ignore those. Okay, so those are your basic instructions. When you start, just kind of use the default or copy from somebody else whose document looks the way you want. Then oftentimes people will have something like this at the front, which tells it options that you would like to set throughout your document. In this case, what I am saying is don't echo any of the R code. Again, you don't have to have that there, but you'll often see that when you start looking at other people's R Markdown files. Okay, so basic stuff. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time teaching R Markdown. Again, what I want to do is just give you an overview so you know what's available, and then you can start digging in on your own, in your own time, learning it. You can get started just with the help menu here, help, and R Markdown quick reference. That's going to get you, 75% of what you want in the beginning. Okay, so these are titles. You can embed it. You can include plots. This echo equals false. So like this. Oh, I should tell you how this is. So what this is, tick, 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 and tick, 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 that means code. And then in the curly braces, that tells you what kind of code. So that it says R here means that it's R code. As I said, supports a lot of different programming languages. There's going to be Stan, I know there's Pi, there's a variety of things that you could do, and it will understand those languages also. And then the next bit is the name of this code chunk. You don't have to include that. I could just erase that. Okay, but there will be situations later, once you start using our Markdown a lot, where you will want to know those code chunk names. And then you do comma, and then you can give various instructions. And a really common one is echo equals false, which means don't include that code. I didn't need to include that here because I gave the instruction at the top to not include it for any of them. Okay. So there we go. That's your basic one. I'm not going to run that one because I ran test and it's pretty similar. I want to jump into a little more interesting ones. So first I'm going to show you how math is dealt with and show you something to be kind of aware of. So really a nice thing about our Markdown is that your math is beautiful. So if you need to include a lot of math, it's going to come out really nice. This is HTML. Look at that. This is something really hairy. This is some of my actual work, and you can see it. It's just so beautiful. You don't have to worry about it. If you've been working with math for a while, you know that it is a real headache. It's traditionally has been a real headache to have math in HTML, and those problems are solved now. Super easy. Okay, here we go. So here's math. How do you include math? It shows up in these things that are begin equation, end equation. For those of you who have heard of LaTeX and the typesetting language for math called LaTeX, it uses the same language, which is fantastic. No more learning a new markup for math. And now they've adopted the standard one, which has been around for many, many years, which is LaTeX. And you include like dollar signs. Okay. I'm not going to teach you the formatting for math. I just want to make you aware that it's there and it's super easy now in our Markdown. You can also knit to PDF. Traditionally, this is how people who did a lot of math, they only worked in LaTeX and they were knitting to PDF files. Now we can also do it easily into HTML also. Okay. If you knit this thing to Word, however, it's not going to look so nice. You can get the equations in Word, but there's a bit more fussing involved. And I rarely will do that myself unless I'm doing it for, like I need it for a report. And then I will invest that energy into that. But if I'm doing a big math equation heavy intensive report, I'm often doing that into PDF just because it would be a bit painful in Word. But if you need to do it in Word, it is possible. Okay, so let's see some more examples. Let's see this. No, I'm not going to do that first. I'm going to jump in. I'll show you some tables. So the basic behavior for tables is kind of rudimentary, but there's been a lot of work in the last few years of making it easier to make professional quality tables. I'm going to show you that in the second half. But be aware, if you started playing with R Markdown you know, 5 years ago or so, and you thought, tables are so ugly, gotten a lot better. But let's see the ugly ones first before I go into the nicer ones later. It's always worked kind of okay. So HTML and PDF, let's see what they look like. These are generally okay. Not bad. This is just the default. Oh, I'm using, looks like I'm using Cable Extra. Okay, to make it looks the same. Okay, so you do things, you know, like having your tables in here, and you know things float right. So this Cable Extra gives you a lot of different options. Be aware if you are using Cable Extra, like it's in active development. So a lot of these nice table ones are in active development, which means that things can change on you from year to year. You just need to be aware of that. It's not too bad. It's not too bad, but your output can look different, like 2 years later. So the big thing that people have been working on is how to make nice things that knit to Word. So I'm going to show you the default, and I'm going to show you Cable Extra. And you can see that it's not going to look that hot. Okay. So, so this is the default output for tables. Not terrible, but I mean, typically we'd want that table centered. There's Cable Extra, and this is just the default for Cable Extra, and you can look, oh, goodness gracious, that looks wretched. Okay, terrible. You can fix it for sure, but you're going to be searching quite a bit on Google to make it look nice. I definitely have spent a lot of time on Google doing that, and if you look into my R&Ds, you're going to see examples of how to fix it. Sorry. Well, that's always covers up my screen. Okay. So, what's that? Okay. So let's see a few extra things here that you should know about. Okay, figures. I think I've showed you the figures and the basics. I want to show you a couple things you might not be aware of. One is combining our Markdown documents. So once we get into working on our Markdown documents that are starting to look real, like something we really use for work, they're big. And like putting everything into the one Our Markdown document, that's going to be kind of a nightmare. You're going to want to modularize things and divide up your sections into different Our Markdown documents. And the way you do that in this is this thing called child. So if you haven't learned about the child feature, you want to learn about that, because that is how you separate things out. So like if I'm writing a paper, I'm going to have, you know, figures, child figure 1, and then child, you know, figure 2. So that R Markdown document is only going to be for figure 1. Okay. So let's see, I can knit this. HTML there. So there we go. So you see, this is pulling in this child. It had all this text here, and then it's pulling in those figures. In the next example, when I show you a report, I'm also going to show you how you could pull in text. So that your intro text, your methods text could be different children. You can imagine too, maybe have a different chapter for each region, and that you'd have different files for the text for each chapter, say. Okay. So you want to look at that if you need to do that kind of thing. And then lastly, I will show you some options for creating presentations. Okay, show you the default ones. Okay, so there's a few different, you can see there's a few different types of default output. You've got these IO slides. I'm going to show you this one. This one is a PDF, and then there's an option to knit to PowerPoint. This is fairly new. I haven't actually tried that. But I will say that I do find the kind of the default output, it's really hard for me to get the look that I would like. So outputting to PowerPoint and then kind of manually futzing with things might be something I would want to do. But this is just the standard format. All this the skin, you could alter it if you wanted. I mean, sort of like the look of it could be altered because this is an HTML file. You can input like your own cascading styles file. I also have show an example of this one. So this is kind of a, there are a few different other presentation styles that people use. This is one that's been out there. You can run it and give it a try. I think it'll ask you to install that. Okay, so that's a quick overview. Now, so one kind of tip about working on our Markdown files. So if you're just working for yourself, you don't have to invent all this and figure all this out. Just poke around on somebody's GitHub site and look at their R Markdown files. As you see the output a bit, you're going to immediately recognize that something was generated from R Markdown. And so like the whole website that you've been going to, that's all generated with R Markdown. And so what you do is that you go to somebody's GitHub repository, and then you click on their R Markdown and you copy it, and then you modify that. And in particular, you want to look at this. So this is where they're going to be customizing their R Markdown. Okay, so that's one thing. So, copy as much as you can so you don't have to figure all this out on your own. And then secondly, if you're doing this within a team and you need professional looking things, you only need one R Markdown wizard in your group, because that person will create the template that everybody else uses. I mentioned that because we're going to be going into our Markdown wizard territory, and I think it's important to understand what is possible so that you don't see like the default output and think, oh, that's no good, that doesn't look professional. So I'm going to show you something that does look professional, how in the ways that I've used it in actual reports. But just be aware that you need to know what's possible, but only one person in the team actually creates the structure. Okay, any questions before I move on? All right, okay, let's go see the report. So this one is where I'm at, okay? And I'm going to paste the link in so you can see that. the link. For those of you watching this on video, I will double check that I have this in my notes. So let's take a look at the structure of this. So first off, I'm going to open this up. So I'm going to show you how to generate something like this. The first thing that you're going to notice is that the format is really different. So it's not the default format at all. And R Markdown generated this. This isn't something that I went back and altered. So how do you get, first off, how do you get this format? So, Kirsten, no, not quite. So this is a question about making reports 508 compliant. So in the ones that I have been involved with, that has been a post-processing step. So when we're done with the report, we're done with the Word report, then we are, that's going on to somebody else to deal with those issues in the sort of final step. Okay. So first off, let's look at this YAML up here, and I'll walk you through what's going on. So in terms of the output, these are the instructions for the different types of output. I'm going to focus here on the Word document. And the key thing to get a Word document that uses the layout that you want is to reference a template file. And normally a template would be a template DOTX. Unfortunately, the Flex table package that I'm going to show you, I discovered it has a bug and it won't like a DOTX ending. Hopefully they're going to fix that soon. But in the meantime, you have to rename your template files DOCX for them to work. But let me show you kind of how you're going to make a template. So in practice, what you do is you would generate a file as a Word file, just using your R Markdown. Yeah. Okay. And now what I do is you do save as. Did I do this? Okay. Template, that's it. So now I've got this template thing, and now you can just set whatever, however you want the template to be. And so, I can go here, design here, and pick some different design. There, I've changed the design. I'm going to save that. There we go. And then for things like, figures, you do, I think it's over in your styles. Where is it? Home. Styles there. nuts and styles. I was doing this on my Mac earlier, but somewhere over here, you're going to see the styles. And then you can do things like center your figure. What I can show you is things like, layout or design, this page borders, and I don't want that border. I can get rid of it. Okay. So that's how you do it. So you change this template, and then I can close that. And then here, I am going to update this to template 2. So let's do, this is a feature of RStudio I don't like. I have to always update this thing to find things. Where did it go? Okay. Looks like it saved it somewhere that I'm not expecting, so I won't be able to demo this, but hopefully you got the idea. You open that, save it as a template, make sure you save it in your main area, and then you just put that here, and then it'll change the whole outlook of your Word file. So that's what you want to do there. Okay, so next thing is, okay, pause on that template. Some other things to know about the template is I found that the templates really work great at figures and the overall look and all the headings. Unfortunately, the challenge is your tables. So try as I might, I have not been able to consistently get my Word templates to make the tables the way I like, but the new Flex Table package is really great and it works very nicely with Word. So I'm going to show you how to use that and make nice tables. So if you look at this, it's just got some basic tips on how to work. You want to be modular when you're working with a really big report. Having everything buried within this, one huge report just makes it really hard to work on separate pieces. So you're going to lean heavily on these child R&Ds. Don't use your chunk labels on your child R&Ds. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these. You can read through this and get some tips from someone who suffered a lot with this. I will comment on this part. How do you reference files within a big R&D? And I always use this format here. I'm going to use file path, and then I allow file path to create my my file paths to documents. I will never hard code it in, because if I hard code it in, it is likely not to work across PCs and Macs. And everything I do, it needs to work across both of them, because I work on both. And my team is going to have both types. So use the file path. If you don't know about the here package, definitely learn that, because you don't want to be kind of hard coding in locations of things. So this here tells you where your working directory is. So if you've got bits of code that say, set working directory, that is really going to cause you headaches later. Learn the here package. Okay, some more tips about that. The templates. Okay. So one other big tip for you Word users is you need to know how to do page breaks. And took me a long time to discover it, and it's right here. Just copy this bit of code into your reports whenever you need a page break. Okay, so let's jump in here and I will show you. So you can see, I'm going to just go through this and show you the bits. So, so now I have in my report, I have, this sample title. I actually didn't make it very nice. But then we get into the next part. We have our acknowledgments. What this is saying is don't add that to the table of contents. I could automatically generate a table of contents for this Word document. So here, this is going to add it to the table of contents. Got a page break, introduction. Okay, well, that would be weird not to have that. Okay. And now you start to see the children. And this is how I often do things, is I'll have my text, my tables, and my figures in different places. It helps me find them. So if I go to the text here, I can then look at my introduction, and there's the text for my introduction. You'll see here that I have references. The format for references is, in my feeling, it's kind of hard to remember. So you just have to take notes on how to include references, and it'll automatically include them using your reference file. I forgot to show you that. I'll show you that back up here. So you can include a bibliography, and it'll automatically include the things. Okay. So now, go back here. If you scroll to the side, it's going to give you an outline, and then it helps you jump around. So you jump back there. Back to the intro. And here's a table. That's that first table. It's just a single table. Same figure. It's just a single figure. If I were to click on that, it's just the code for making that figure. And now what I want to do is I want to jump here and show you this table counts flex and give you an overview of how you're going to create multiple tables that have the same format. So if you are in the situation where you need to make the same table kind of over and over, you don't want to get in the situation where you're copying that code and you just keep copying that. Because that creates work for you, a lot of work for you down the line if you change, say, the number of populations or the number of individuals, whatever it is that is determining how many tables you have in your report. So you want to try to automate that. And that's a little tricky. So this is definitely something where you want to look at somebody else's code who's done it before. So, yeah, reach out to people who do this and get tips from them. You know, I'm one person, but I'm not the only person in NOAA Fisheries who does a lot of this. So just kind of ask around, you'll find people who do this, and they can show you this kind of code. And remember, you only need one R Markdown wizard who's going to write this template for you. Not everyone needs to be able to do this at all, but you do need to be aware of what's possible. So I'm using the Flex Table package here. I've got a little function in here that is going to clean up my column headings. Oftentimes in our data files, our column headings look pretty awful. Let's see, I've got my data for this here. So it's going to pull in here. This is, okay. So this is just a raw data file. This is an actual one from 2 years ago. So, you know, this is just what, you know, our data files often look like. It's hard to tell here, but it's just a simple flat CSV file. And the tables are calling up this CSV file, and then they're going to make the tables from that. So I need a little function to add in a new page in my Word document. And now this is going to read in that file. And this is going to get the last modification time for that file. So, okay, so those of you who, you're working with an R, with a Git repository, if you have your data files in a Git repository, remember that to be cautious about looking at timestamps. So if I go and I look at the timestamp on this Lower Columbia CSV, that is when I pulled this repository into my local computer. And if I were to think that, oh, that's the last time that was modified, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's not how what that means there. It's just the last time it was pulled in, the last time it was modified on my computer. So remember, this is something to be aware of when you're working with Git repositories. Those timestamps are not what you think they are. So what you want instead is the last modification time. And this is how you're going to get that from your Git code. If this really irritates you in your repository, this sort of constantly changing timestamps, and in some of my teams, it's a big problem because timestamps are part of our workflow. If that is the case, check back in some of the prior notes. I think I put it in week 1 and week 2. I show you how to make your repositories not do that. Those timestamps will be the last modification date, but you're going to have to set that up. Okay. So anyhow, here I got that modification time, and I'm going to put that underneath my table. So it's always going to be clear what data is being pulled into that table. Then I create a function that creates my table. And this looks really hairy, but you only have to do it once is the nice thing. This is the flex table format. If you work with Gzplot, this will be kind of familiar. You just keep adding on the features of the table. And even though this looks a little hairy, actually I find it much easier in Flex Table to create what I want. So you just, because it's kind of like a Gzplot and that you keep adding things on. So here's my data, make a regular table, auto fit it, add this footer, add that footer, add this header, change the column format, so, change the font size. I just keep adding on the features that I want to building that. So now I have this function that creates my yearly count, my spawner count table. 5 more minutes here. So now what I do is I write a for loop, and in this case, it's going to go through all the common population names in that table, and it's going to create a table. I limited it by the first 2 just so that my Word document wasn't huge. In a real setting, I'd be doing this probably for all the populations. I do some subsetting, and then I pass that data into this function, and it creates that table. So that's how it's working, just running through all those. Pro tip for those of you who need to do this, talk with people who do this, because there's all these little picky things about exactly how you need to include that code within a for loop. So like code that works fine outside a for loop, oh, it's so frustrating, it stops working inside a for loop, and there's all these little tricks you have to use. But you only have to set it up once. So great. So that's how that works. You got your references. This is weird code, but that's what it looks like. And then I'm going to knit that. Now a moment. And there we go. So it's got that. And pulled in all that text, made this nice little figure of this for me, and made this from the data. Doesn't look that nice, but it automatically created it for all the different populations. We're going to learn how to do this next week, making plots with Gzplot. This one is, as I said, I didn't put any effort into it, so it's a little ugly. But Gzplot is really crucial in my experience for making you more efficient where you've got different data sets coming in, because you don't want to be making decisions about what's the format of this when you've got 3 of these versus 6 of these versus 7. You don't want to be like spending all your time doing these kind of, custom little figures or something like that. Okay. So this is the output of the tables that are coming out of Flex Table. You can see, it comes out really nice. It works great with Word. And now you can see it's got the proper modification. We last modified this on, looks like Tuesday. Okay. So I limited it to 2 tables. I could have used all the populations. I think it would be about 10. All right. So there we go. So, yeah. Play with that. I put the link for RStudio Cloud in the chat for this report. And if you go there and copy that, you can run it immediately. It's got everything installed. If you copy it onto your computer, it's going to complain a bit that, hey, it's going to give you errors and say you need to install, XYZ packages. So just keep trying and keep installing the packages. For those of you who are new, the way you install packages in RStudio, you go here and then install, and then you start writing the name. Install it. All right, so that is it for today. I am going to stop the recording and we'll switch to the Q&A, and you can either post in the chat or okay. So any pro tips for keeping the RMD at a manageable size? Manageable size, for example, for PDF. So, okay, I guess I need some more details on what you mean by keeping it a Oh, so like when you're outputting to a PDF and the PDF is absolutely enormous? Oh, is that what you mean? The actual PDF is like, 60 megabytes or something? Yes, okay. Okay, so, okay, yeah, okay. So that kind of, so there's 2 different questions. You have the cache question there. That's kind of a different can of worms. So first off, for PDFs that are really enormous, no, I don't have a good solution, and I run into this all the time, especially when I'm creating talks and I output to PDF. So I think there are, there are programs that you could download and you could kind of post-process by running them through things that compress the PDF. Personally, I run into that rarely enough that I just upload my PDF to something on the web that will shrink it for me. And usually I can often get that 60 megabyte PDF down to something that's like closer to like, 5, something reasonable. So that's what I'm doing. If I ran into that, on, a weekly basis, say I had a report that I needed to output to PDF and I needed that to be compressed, then I would have to install some separate software. I have never gotten Adobe Acrobat to successfully really compress my PDFs, and I've tried very hard. I might not know how to, tell it properly, but any of the just sort of the usual things you'd use in Adobe Acrobat have not shrunk my PDFs coming out of RStudio. So the question, but I want to address this question about the cache. So this is kind of a different question where, so you have like a really large R Markdown and you've got a lot of code that takes a long time. So you want to set your cache equals true, and in your R Markdown, it's going to be up here. So early on, it says include false. So this is typically where you're going to set all those options. So you could set, cache equals true here, or you might do that on a specific set of code. You just want to cache, or you want to do it here. But like if you had, a bit of R code, you could that you needed to cache, you can put it in, like this part here. Not for open XML, but if this were R, you could say cache equals true. But I want just to give you a heads up that caching can give you these kind of mysterious R Markdown, not errors, but like wrong output that just can take you a really long time to track down. So if you are using caching, just be aware that that can happen. And if you run into an output bug that, why, this was working fine before, then turn that cache off, rerun it, and then turn it back on. I run into this a lot because I write books with R Markdown, and these are massive things that take just a really long time to run. So I am using caching to help me with that, but I do have to turn that caching off periodically because I don't know why, but somehow the cache gets kind of out of sync or something. Okay. So, Maxine, thank you. Okay. If you're working on a manuscript with people who are not using R Markdown, you knit your R Markdown in Word format. If they do any changes with Word, can you pull the modifications from Word to R Markdown? No, you can't. It's awful. And I have tried a bunch of different things, like, what if I output to XML? Could I input that back in? Yeah, I in a practical application, I'm working with collaborators. Like my last paper, I was working with collaborators, and we were working. I was exporting to Word, and they would do their track changes in Word, and yeah, I was doing it a lot manually, which is really not what I want to be doing, but that's often what I've had to do. And that's why if I can, if we have different team members working on different sections, like if I can have if they're just working on the introduction or the methods, if I can kind of separate that into different R Markdowns, that can be helpful with that. Kind of related to that is I have not found anything good for the track changes in Word. I mean, it seems like, yeah, you can do that with Git, but with what's happening with Git is it's different. Like you're committing like a whole suite of changes. Whereas when we're working with track changes in Word, we're wanting to go like, I want to review this change, and then I decide, yeah, I accept it or I don't accept it, and then the next one, I accept, I don't. It's like, often we're not doing, accept all or reject all, which the accept all and reject all is like the option you would have with inputting a commit with Git. So, so it's still problematic. So there's still a manual part to that. Okay, let me see if we'll do this. There's another thing comment about what you said. Oh, okay. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you've got a huge report and you want to get that converted to R Markdown, so you're transitioning to using R Markdown, don't do that manually. There are tools, packages that will do that for you, and it'll get you really close. So your tables might look awful, but like your text and your headings and that kind of stuff are going to look good. So I have done that when I'm transitioning to doing reports in R Markdown. Okay. Any other questions? Anything. It doesn't have to be R Markdown related. Whoa, HTML forms. Well, that one, that one you'll have to look on Google. I have never had to do. Well, I'm assuming that you mean like forms where people are entering things. If so, do be aware that R Markdown understands all HTML. So you can always just put raw HTML into your R Markdown. Which brings me actually to something I didn't mention, which is that I was focusing on Word and showing you how you can do these templates. So when you get to your HTML, one of your options is to include a custom CSS. So you would include a custom cascading styles document in order to change the appearance of your HTML document. In this one, I just did some fairly standard things, which is telling it that I want a floating table of contents, which let's float off to the style side. I didn't have the time to show you how to do a cascading style sheet for this. Okay. Okay, any other questions?